How do you lose an empire? More than 1,000 years ago, a powerful maritime kingdom rose in Southeast Asia. Positioned between China and India, it controlled one of the busiest trade routes on Earth. Merchants crossed its waters. Wealth flowed through its ports. Then it vanished, so completely that for centuries, much of the world forgot it had ever existed. This is the story of Srivijaya. The waters of Southeast Asia were once the highways of the ancient world. Merchants traveled vast distances in search of silk, spices, ceramics, and precious goods. Their journeys connected great civilizations across Asia. At the crossroads of these routes stood a kingdom called Srivijaya. From its base in Sumatra, the empire grew into a powerful maritime network that influenced trade across the region. Ships sailing between India and China often passed through waters under its control. Every voyage brought wealth. Every merchant brought opportunity. Over time, Srivijaya became one of the most influential powers in Southeast Asia. Foreign courts knew its name. Travelers wrote about it. For centuries, the empire prospered. Yet despite all its wealth, despite all its influence, there is something strangely missing. Consider the great civilizations of the ancient world. Rome left behind monuments, roads, and cities that still stand today. Egypt left pyramids that have survived for thousands of years. Across Asia, powerful kingdoms built palaces, temples, and walls that became lasting symbols of their power. Their presence is impossible to ignore. Srivijaya was different. Historical records described a wealthy and influential empire. Foreign travelers wrote about it. Distant kingdoms knew its name. Yet when historians began searching for evidence, they found surprisingly little. No vast stone cities, no monumental palaces, no obvious capital waiting to be rediscovered. For centuries, the empire seemed almost invisible. It was as if one of Asia's most powerful kingdoms had simply vanished. And the deeper historians looked, the stranger the mystery became. The answer may lie in the environment that made Srivijaya powerful in the first place. Unlike many ancient civilizations, Srivijaya was not built around massive stone monuments. It grew along rivers, through wetlands, across waterways that connected distant communities and markets. Wood was abundant, easy to transport, easy to build with. In a tropical climate, it was also temporary. Over the centuries, timber decayed. Floods reshaped the landscape. Rivers changed course. Vegetation reclaimed what remained. The very environment that helped Srivijaya thrive may also have erased much of its physical legacy. What once stood at the center of a vast trading network slowly disappeared back into the landscape itself. Yet the environment alone cannot explain Srivijaya's decline. By the 11th century, the empire faced new challenges. One of the most significant came from across the Bay of Bengal. In 1025, the Chola Empire launched a naval campaign against Srivijaya. Several important ports were attacked. Trade networks were disrupted. Although the empire survived, its dominance had been shaken. New rivals emerged. Trade routes evolved. Political power shifted across the region. The maritime world that had once favored Srivijaya was changing. Century by century, its influence faded. The empire did not vanish overnight. Instead, it slowly drifted away from the center of regional affairs. And with time, its memory began to fade as well. Yet Srivijaya was never truly gone. The clues had been there all along. Scattered across inscriptions, preserved in foreign records, hidden within the accounts of travelers and forgotten texts. Piece by piece, historians began assembling the puzzle. Ancient inscriptions discovered in Sumatra revealed the existence of a powerful kingdom. Chinese records described a wealthy maritime state that connected the trade routes of Asia. Archaeological discoveries added new fragments to the story. Slowly, the outlines of the lost empire began to emerge. Not as a city of stone, not as a collection of towering monuments, but as a maritime civilization whose power flowed through rivers, trade, and the sea. Today, much about Srivijaya remains uncertain. New discoveries continue to reshape our understanding of the empire. Yet with every inscription, every excavation, and every historical record, the picture has become a little clearer. The kingdom that once seemed lost to history is slowly being understood once again. Not every empire leaves behind towering monuments. Some leave only fragments, a few inscriptions, a handful of records. Traces hidden within rivers, forests, and memory. Yet from those fragments, a forgotten story emerged. The story of Srivijaya, an empire that once connected much of Asia and nearly disappeared from history itself.